Coming to you live from deep within an icy but windy and also sometimes sunny radioactive meme land, we are the survivors of the alt-right apocalypse, the few, the brave, the bitchy, once more wading into battle against the froggy hordes with Rantzerker TLDR style number 87. No, you didn't! Anyway, the reason why I'm sort of calling that interim is because we're going to talk about in-group, out-group in the non-feminist community. Because right now, I really don't give a shit who I upset. This is Mike's channel, and we can edit out anything inflammatory afterward anyway. If you're listening to this after the live show and you want to hear the full stream, go to www.honeybadgerradio.com for our unabridged podcasts, or look up to the right of this video. There's a link to go directly to the unabridged version on YouTube. You may or may not know Brian's fundraiser to fight testicular cancer is still ongoing, and please go to www.feedthebadger.com and put a few shekels in the hat for him, because we're going to have an announcement on his pathology report soon, and it is not good news. So with that cheeriness out of the way, let's begin. We're joined by Devil Deer, cousin of TLDR. Hello, Devil Deer.
Hi.
I'm calling him that now because for whatever reason, his voice synthesizer is somehow hit some sort of low, because you know he's a deer, and he has to synthesize his voice because I believe that ovids. What species are you? Like
it's probably best to not question that, because that way I can ingratiate myself with any and all of the does. Giggity.
Ah. All right. So even the does that aren't technically your species, isn't that like species rape or something?
Potentially, because I'm, lying about who I am, which I've been told is rape by human standards.
Okay. All right. And it probably not by nature standards, because my God, Mother Nature is rapey.
Oh no,
yeah,
right. By nature standards, I am a suave and smooth individual.
All right. So I guess we could start.
Bitches just can't resist being poked in the butt with my antlers. They always stand up and let me have my way.
Okay, so
I'm already slipping off my chair. Your voice is too much now, dude. Do something about that. You want to know how I'm slipping off my chair? Yeah, there's that much of it.
Oh God, can you guys still hear me? Because I think I just cut out.
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good.
Okay, I'm good. Okay, all right. So let's begin this how did the people put it? Dumpster fire. Why don't you tell us about what you were talking about prior to VidCon? You know what? Let's just go all in, and what you were trying to say, and everything. I know we're gonna get it anyway. So.
Well, inevitably, yes. I just actually want to find the thing so I can actually just see it, just refresh my memory and all that.
While Devil Deer is doing that, I'm going to call you that until you tell me to stop it. I'll just inform you that our after show is going to be on Kekistan and the call to oppose Kekistan, which, let me see who did that. Affinity Magazine. We must stand up against Kekistan. We must stand up against Kekistan. And oppose the Kekistanis. This is from Affinity Magazine, and that's what we'll be covering in the after show. And if you're interested in joining us in the after show, www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. Please become a patron, and you will have access to the after show, or you'll even, depending on how much you pledge, you can join us in the after show and chat with us about being Kekistanis and how we're horrible people that need to be opposed at all costs. And TLDR, how are you doing?
I have found the thing, so now I remember all of the things. Maybe, yeah. Kind of.
All right, so you want to give us a rundown? That sigh sounds promising.
I'm sick of drama and sick of bullshit and sick of nonsense, and yet I'm gonna be poking the bear anyway because reasons of fan fiction. Anyway. So yeah, this was it was just a little reminder which I put out that there was the VidCon thing happening in that week, which was the YouTuber convention where people go and do whatever the fuck it is that they do there, and that there were several people of the general anti-feminist, rationalist, skeptic, whatever. I don't give a shit what they're calling themselves now, frankly. That general sphere genre of video creation, because I find that if ever you sort of try and say, well, this person is in, this person's in, this person, they'll just say like, no, that's not how it is, but they'll still continue all of their ties with all of the other people in that genre. But that's neither here nor there. And basically, I was just pointing out that it's really bizarre that there are some people from that general grouping who would deny that there was any sort of community, any sort of bond or link between each other, while very obviously partaking in a community activity. And obviously, then when you get there, you see people, you know, they're doing all of the things that I've sort of pointed out. It's like, yeah, they're doing all of these random collaboration videos with each other while they're there. They're all talking to each other, spending all of their spare time with each other. You're just seeing all of this interaction, which speaks very obviously of some sort of social bond. And it's kind of like, well, you can't really deny that there is some sort of social bond there. In fact, I've seen that quite a few of the people who were previously sort of saying, oh, there's no real community or anything like that, now coming out after the fact and saying, well, yeah, it's pretty much undeniable now that there absolutely is. And all of the hilarious straw men being pointed at me saying stupid shit like, oh dear, says that people shouldn't be allowed to have friends and shouldn't be allowed to meet up and all sorts of other bullshit like that. I've never said that doing this is inherently some sort of problem, or that people shouldn't do it, or that it's necessarily a bad thing. Merely that trying to claim that it's not when people have eyes and can see what's going on is either intentionally misleading people, just outright disingenuousness, or you're an absolute moron.
Well, I mean, I would sort of agree with that. Like, pointing out that this is something that happens is sort of like, I don't even understand how that's not a neutral statement. Human's gonna human. Yeah. There you go. And that's what's happening. I remember when someone, I think, I'm not gonna, I mean, this is pretty neutral, but there was someone tweeted the Honey Badger Radio account talking about your post. And I was looking at it and I was like, well, this doesn't seem controversial. It's just what people do. And just own it. Like, in response, they tweeted it out at me. And I said in response, well, yeah, we went there to network. Honey Badger Radio has a specific purpose. We went there to network. We went there to hone our craft. And that's what I did. And I'm not going to be like, oh, no, that's not what I was doing there, or not what we were doing there. That's what we were doing there. And I think that, like, and I think from what I'm getting at, it's that own it. And when you can't own something, there's something going on. There's something deeper going on when you're obviously doing something and saying, I'm not doing this thing. And it's not like a situation where you can't do that thing. There's nothing any non-human about going and creating cliques and having fun and talking with each other and making a community. That's a very human thing to do. I wouldn't say that we're really as much part of that community, just being what we are. Like I'd like to draw a distinction, and I don't know, maybe it's a distinction without a meaning, but there's the non-feminist community. I'm not going to use the word skeptic because I got into a bit of a conversation with Mike about that, and he's not sure that's a name that's applied to them. So maybe non-feminist is less offensive. But there's the non-feminist community, which is comprised also of anti-feminists who directly oppose feminism. And then there's sort of the men's rights community, and there's overlap. But in my personal case, and I'm not going to speak for all men's rights activists or people who are called men's rights activists or men's issues enthusiasts, but for my personal case, I oppose feminism where I see feminism not like in a very practical sense, like where I see feminism opposing what I want to advance in my mission statement, which is compassion for men. That doesn't mean no compassion for women. It just means that is my mission statement. That's what I'm doing this for. And that's what everything I do is ultimately to promote. And I believe that compassion for men also means compassion for women, but my focus is on men. So Again, I'm anti-feminist in the context of that. So, for example, I pose feminist theory on principle as well, but in the context of what the work that I'm trying to do for Honey Badger Radio, I oppose it because it is a mental health risk for men to be told that they are responsible for all the ills in society. So I would say there's some distinctions to be drawn here, but at the same time as I recognize that, you know, non-feminism is sort of creating its own community with its own sort of ecosystem, which is, in my opinion, it's a good thing, but there's also negatives that come out of that. And you have to be, in my opinion, where they become really negative is when you're saying, well, we're not doing this while you're doing it, because that's where you start to create blind spots and you start to stop questioning yourself and your behavior. And everybody who's in this situation, I mean, to me, the ultimate enemy in all of this isn't whatever ideology has got the reins of the crazy, you know, and developing the madness. To me, the problem is a particular way of controlling discourse to exclude any kind of conversation on certain topics on unquestionable assumptions, and to use emotional blackmail, extortion to force people to not discuss these things. And in my mind, everything should be allowed to be on the table. And the way that this applies to in-groups and out-groups is that in-groups tend to create orthodoxies and then define their out-group based on those orthodoxies, and those orthodoxies are unquestionable assumptions. And it's not that when you point and say, hey, you guys are starting to look like this, it's not that we're saying you can't have friends, you can't be community, you can't enjoy each other's company, or even that you can't have cliques of people who like each other more than other people. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that, hey, this is a pitfall. Be careful. You know, pay attention to it. That's what I'm saying. I don't know. Maybe TLDR is saying you guys are all wretched human beings. And
no, that was basically entirely my point. It's like this pattern of behavior exists. It's something that all people are subject to. It's not like a bad thing. It's not like you all have to roam off into the forest and become a bunch of weird hermit loners or any other stupid shit like that. So just be aware that when you create in-groups and out-groups and things like that, that it does alter how you treat people, and that can then lead to things like not pointing out errors where sometimes it might be needed to do so because you like the person too much, you know, you don't want to hurt their feelings, or things like that. You know, that it happens, and yet there are going to be people who sort of try and deny that it happens. And then there's people who, well, even like you've got them in the chat here right now, trying to sidestep the issue of just talking about basic in-group and out-group preference thing by just sort of whining, oh, you're just being salty, you're just being mad, you're just being jealous because you're not their friends, and all sorts of other non-arguments like that. And to anyone who tries to propose that argument, I'm just going to say to them, well, you're on your period. Okay,
well,
great. Where does this get us? Where does, you know, implying someone's emotional state in some way, does that mean that they're wrong? No, it doesn't. So stop trying to do it. It's a non-argument.
Yeah, saying you're salty, it is. Like, and even if TLDR was salty, there likely is some and again, I'm not like I'm going on sides here. Everybody has something insightful, really. And if in my opinion, this is what I've found. Most people have sometimes the insight comes from sort of, like, recently I had a conversation with a Marxist, and I think the insight came more from just trying to figure out his logic. And I don't necessarily agree with his logic, but the insight came, you know, from trying to figure it out, basically, from me trying to figure it out, insight into his mentality. I mean, there's always something to get out of every exchange. And in this case, Tildir is right. Like, saying, oh, this person is salty, when they have a point, it doesn't take that point away, even if they are salty. I'm not going to conjecture whether or not Tildir is salty.
I don't really give a shit. I'm just noticing a basic pattern of behavior. That's it. But, you know,
Yeah.
if you point out something that people don't like, if it hits their nerve, then they seem to think that, well, if I can just impugn some sort of emotion upon you, then that means you're wrong. I mean, never mind the fact that, well, basically, as you've just said, there is such a thing as, you know, righteous emotions. You know, you can be righteously annoyed with something. You can be righteously frustrated with something. You can be righteously disappointed with something because that's what that thing is. So again, just sort of saying, "Oh, you feel an emotion," and it doesn't invalidate anything. But anyway,
No.
let's talk a little bit about social identity theory, because this is the thing that I'm noticing and, well, have noticed. It's a completely normal thing. It's not inherently a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It has, as with all patterns of human behavior and social interaction, it has advantages and disadvantages. So that would just be the easiest thing to talk about. So social identity theory was something which came about around about the end of the 70s, round about the end of the start of the 80s. It was put together by two guys, Ty Hall and someone else. I think it was Turner, something like that. But if you just Google up social identity theory, their two names will come up. I guarantee it, because they are the two people who sort of really coined this and basically proved that this is how human beings operate. So human beings kind of operate basically on sort of three tiers, basically. Social categorizing things, social identification of things, and then social comparison of things. So the social categorizing side of things is that you put things basically into categories as a means of understanding and identifying. We do this all the time. It is something which is basically embedded into your psyche. It's irremovable from how humans think and perceive the world. You see things, that are all of the same color, you can identify they're all of the same color. If you see a field of horses, you can identify them all as being the same because they're all the same shape, even if their colors are different. And it can go into all sorts of other things from there. So you just look at people. You can see there's black people, there's white people. Okay, you can sort them based on those phenotypes. It doesn't mean anything inherently that you're able to do that, but you can. And then it can go into slightly more abstract things like, say, the power relationship or hierarchy between a professor and a student. If you walk into a lecture hall, there's an implicit difference between the two, because obviously you've got on one side of the room a load of chairs facing one way, and on the other end of the room a big thing on blackboard, whiteboard, whatever, on which you can write things up, where one person is going to be standing. So there's implied categories even built into how that room is organized. And human beings pick all this stuff up. It's innate. You cannot stop yourself from doing it. It's how people do things. It's part of your sort of natural. It's basically part of your survival. It's basically part of your survival. Basically, just how you survive. I'm struggling
strategy.
To find the words. Yeah, it's basically part of your survival strategy. The ability to identify things that are like you, things that are good for you, things that are not like you, and things that are bad for you, and things like that. It's absolutely necessary. So on top of that, we have then the second layer, which is social identification. So we'll say we've got social categorization. We're just going to apply that to humans for now. So you then go on to the social identification of things. And with that, what that means is that you identify as part of a group and you want to belong to a certain group. So when that happens, in some cases, you may incidentally be part of a group just by virtue of what interests you have, what tastes you have, what clothes you wear. It doesn't really matter. You may just then find a bunch of other people who like that, and you're like, hey, I like these things too. Great, and you'll be sort of within that group that way. Other ways that people can do that is they see a group and they want to become a part of it, at which point they will adopt characteristics of that group in order to ingratiate themselves with that group. And you can see people, again, doing this all the time. It's something that everyone does. It's quite normal. You go into different situations, you behave differently because you sort of look at that and you need to be able to fit in within those sorts of things. So if you go to a funeral and you're normally someone who rocks around in a Hawaiian shirt with a boombox on your shoulder and all that stuff, you're not going to do that in that environment, because you've identified the social group that's there, and you need to fit in, and you want to fit in, so you take on the behavior of the people that's there. That's sort of a very specific social setting in which that happens. But this is happening all the time with everyone you meet, and everyone is always signaling their social identification as well. This is why we have fashion trends and all sorts of things like this. People constantly signal their social identification, and as a result of that, then people train themselves and adopt characteristics of the things that they want to be in. And then once you're in that group, then people also begin tailoring their attitudes and begin tailoring their beliefs to that group. So for instance, if you were sort of an on the fence Republican or an on the fence Democrat or something like that, sort of, you know, you're kind of in the party a little bit, not really that interested, but then you start going and hanging out with other people of that group. They're very definitely in that group, and as time goes on, you're going to pick up behaviors that they exhibit and beliefs that they exhibit and things like that. That's how it works. So some of it you will consciously do, and some of it you'll subconsciously do. You pick these things up as you go along. And then the third tier of that is then social comparison, and that is after you've characterized groups, you've characterized yourself as a part of a group, and then you identify within that group. And when you are in that, what you inevitably do is you begin comparing yourself to other groups. Now, it won't be necessarily comparing yourself to all other groups, because some of them won't be related in any capacity. But if it's something within the same sphere, then you will begin to make comparisons to that. And the interesting thing about social comparison is that it's something which, again, all humans engage in. You cannot remove that behavior from humans. And you can, it's so easy to trick as well. So for example, you can even trick it with a test called a minimal group paradigm, which was a methodology used by social psychologists and by psychologists. It's actually used by TFL and Turner, who created this social identity theory in order to demonstrate how easy you can do it. And obviously this social identity theory then stood in opposition to, what was it? Reality something theory, which basically says strife only comes out of when you've got two groups who want the same limited resource. And this basically blew that out of the water and said, nope, that's not how things work. So what they did in this test was they got you can get a load of young schoolboys. They don't really care about very much things. They just want to run around and play, and that's pretty much it. And what they'll do is they'll sit them down and they'll say, okay, here are two paintings or something like that. Which one do you prefer? You must give an answer. And obviously they're young boys. They don't give a flying fuck. They really couldn't care less about doing this. So they just kind of arbitrarily pick one or the other. And what was then found is when you pair them up and you ask them to sort of rate each other, sort of favorably or unfavorably based on that selection, you will find that they will rate the people who picked the other painting less favorably than people who picked their own painting. And you can even just assign it to them. You can lie to the kids and you can say, well, that person over there picked the other one. What do you think about that? And then they'll be like, oh, I bet he's a dick, basically. Obviously not nearly that far. But you can trick it over the most mundane and pointless of things like that. And you can see shit like this all over the place. I mean, just go onto any internet forum about, video games or cars or anything like that, and they'll be like, I like this thing, therefore, everyone who doesn't like it is just dumb or they're stupid. They don't belong to my group. And, people can get really, really vehement about this. They can really, really ride this home, to absurd levels. So again, this social comparison thing, this is something which happens. You can't stop this. You cannot stop these three processes from happening. They are innate to humans. They are hardwired in you. It's part of your survival strategy. And then you tie this together with other interesting little things, such as kin selection, in this case specifically a nurture selection, which is a way of people sort of forming closer ties, closer to kinship. Now, human beings are, I realize I'm going on a bit of a lecture here, but it's kind of necessary. So
Feel free.
Human beings engage in kinship behavior, kin selection behavior. Now, a lot of animals that exhibit it exclusively within one family. So you'll tend to find, large social groups of things like monkeys, things like wolves, and all this stuff. Their cooperation is because they tend to be related. So in those sorts of circumstances, one of the members doesn't mind maybe taking a bit of a knock in order to save or benefit one of the others because they know that it's going to come back to them. Now, human beings are a little bit weird in that regard, in that human beings can extend that to other members who aren't related to them. Now, obviously, animals can do it as well because they have to accept new members into their groups and evict members of their own groups. Usually it's the younger males that's the case for. So they can do it, but they don't do it anywhere near the frequency that human beings do. So human beings have this, it's the thing that has allowed human beings to become as successful as they are, the ability for unrelated people to just get together and cooperate with each other. And
if you want a little break from your from the lecture, I can sort of add something to that.
Please do, because my throat is beginning to hurt a bit.
Yeah, rest your throat. Have some water. So
have some bleach.
Have some bleach. Yeah, and to be honest, when I saw all this, I was like, there's probably something deeper going on. There's a rational way to look at all of this drama that I'm seeing around me, that people will be able to explain their position, and it'll sound much more sane and without all of the anger and the accusations of saltiness. And I feel like that's coming forward because I can't see anything that you're saying that's really should be controversial, except that you're saying, hey, you guys over there, this is happening, and it's something that does happen, and something that you have to be aware of and concerned about, and do some things to maybe question yourself and put some doubt into what you're doing. That to me is, I don't know, for personally, after the flush of ego defensiveness that I think every human being feels, and I also feel, I have to sort of nod at that when anybody sort of pulls me short and says, hey, you look like you're succumbing to the in-group, out-group bias in a toxic way there, Alison. You might want to question your, and you start out with, oh my fucking God, you bastard. How could you? Oh, wait, that actually, you're making a good point there. Thank you. I appreciate that. But, it's to me, because I usually go through that, and there's a wisdom there when somebody calls me out on that kind of behavior. When I see that somebody being called out on that kind of behavior, I both understand the anger, but I also sort of understand that the person calling them out isn't necessarily doing so to be an asshole. In some ways, there can be your best friend, because when you start to engage in this kind of behavior that's toxic, or you don't start questioning yourself about it, you stop learning when you start to engage in this kind of toxic in-group, out-group behavior. You start becoming dogmatic, and you lose flexibility in your thoughts and in your rational process. And that is, ultimately that leads to being boring. And then you start to have to start to supplement that with drama, so that your life is not boring anymore. But to me, it's the people who've called me out on that shit. When I look back, I'm like, yeah, thank God they did. Because there, but for the grace of God go I, or spaghetti monster, whatever you want to call it. And so at the end of the day, I've found that kind of criticism is actually beneficial, and a lot of times it's not given with a spirit of positivity. Sometimes it's given really negative, like the criticism is incredibly negative. But still, when you listen to criticism, because it does come from somewhere that's usually spawned by something, usually you can get something out of it. Sometimes very, very difficult to get something out of it, like eat a dick and die. Hard to find any kind of philosophical meaning in that. So some critics don't take this, and don't take what I'm saying and follow it off a cliff. Some criticism is just dumb. But a lot of criticism like this, it's valuable. It's valuable to take a step back and look at yourself from another person's perspective. And that's what I sort of saw happening here. And then shit ton of drama, which I understood too, because humans got a human. But I think there might, I don't want to say there's a common ground because I don't give a shit, but I think there probably is at least some understanding that could be had from all this. And I did want to speak directly. Sorry about that kumbaya bullshit rant. I did actually want to speak directly to what you were saying, TLDR. I think animals create in-group and out-group by smell. And then there's successive ways that human beings did it. Moving past like smell or just being having grown up with a group of people, which would have been like a clan-based system. Then we had language, and people determined in-group, out-group by what language they spoke. And then after we determined in-group, out-group by what language we spoke, we sort of moved on to this idea of almost an abstract set of beliefs as determining in-group, out-group. And that's where we are now. This abstract set of beliefs that everyone agrees with and teaches each other can be represented by like a visual symbol. For example, the cross. The cross represents a series of abstract beliefs. No matter what language you speak, if you're a Christian and you see somebody wearing a cross, you have an immediate sense that you're part of an in-group because you're announcing that you have a shared belief system based on that visual symbol. And having a shared belief system is very much a part of how we establish in-group and out-group now in this day and age. And of course, the shared belief system is ideology. And when you start to have that shared belief system, what seems to end up happening is you start to create sets of unquestionable assumptions and then divide people in-group and out-group based on where they stand on those unquestionable assumptions. And that process is sort of fucking us over. And it really does need to be questioned. And so that's my spiel. Do you have any further to add to that, TLDR?
Oh yeah, an absolute ton. I mean that point that you made about the cross and like religious symbols and things like that. That is the social signaling which I was talking about. Way back ago when I decided I needed to go on the train. Yes, that is a form of social signaling, and what that does is, hey, I belong to this group. You belong to this group. Great. And when you say sort of people started doing things, based on language and whatnot like that, it's not entirely wrong, but there is a nice little addition to that, and that's nurture kinship. So before I decided that my throat was about to give out, before that, I was talking about, kin selection and how humans, do that really sort of quite unusual and quite spectacular thing where they're able to basically expand their sort of kin bonds to people who are not sort of their family. That's sort of what makes humans really quite spectacular like that. And the specific branch that we're looking for here is nurture kinship. And nurture kinship is, well, it's very much as it sounds. It's kinships which are nurtured. So while those can be blood ties, they don't have to be. So that would be, sorry, my throat is really starting to feel weird, but
do you need to get
it's fine. I will power through it. So in this instance, what you're doing is you're sort of nurturing friendships with other people, nurturing bonds with other people. And we can do this via a system of reciprocal altruism, which is very, very close to a system of cooperation called tit for tat, which is something people should know about, but may very well not know about. So what the reciprocal altruism is the concept, first of all, of delayed gratification, which humans are pretty good at for the most part compared to a lot of other animals. I mean, you can see that with things like the Stanford marshmallow test. That's a really, really fun test to do for kids when they're about 4 years old. That's the one where it's, you can have a marshmallow now, or you can wait in like 10 minutes and I'll give you like 5 of them. And around that time, because obviously the kids' brains, they're growing and developing and they're forming all of their new neural pathways and whatnot. And around that age, basically their ability to delay gratification kind of just switches itself on. So on the younger end of that, you sort of say, oh, do you want it now? And they'll be like, yeah, of course I want it now. Because now is all they understand. But after that, it's like, well, no, I'll wait like 10 minutes and get the massive payload, because why the hell wouldn't I? So that's sort of a really important part of this reciprocal altruism and this tit for tat thing. It's the idea that if I do something nice for you, in the future you'll do something nice for me. You know, I can delay my own gratification, or I can even put myself in a situation of social disadvantage so that you can have some sort of advantage, because I expect that in the future that will be repaid to me. And the interesting thing about the tit for tat basic way of doing it is that it goes like that. It goes sort of one to the other, one to the other, one to the other, until someone cheats, at which point the other person sort of cheats on that bargaining front, and then they both reset back to cooperate. So it's actually kind of like the most efficient way of people sort of trading things, be it, you know, resources, or be it information, or, you know, social currencies like friendship and things like that. It's kind of like the best way of doing things, because it's the one which sort of leads to the most overall stability. Even though it's kind of got a little bit of instability built in, it's kind of like the most stable one, with this, you know, with the benefit to instability ratio. So you could do a whole thing about that, but I don't want to go really too far off of that. And this is something else which you can see going through into this social identity theory, which I want to apply to this, because we have to apply it. As always, we have to drag shit back to the fucking drama, because of course we do. So in that sort of instance, if you were to apply it to, say, a job like doing the YouTubes, that would be like, I'll have you on my channel, which is bigger than yours, to do a video. And then in the future, when you've got some bonus from that, you'll totally have me on yours. You know, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. It's that's sort of how people will do that. And that then builds that sense of in-group identity, because you're playing on that nurture kinship. You're playing on that reciprocal altruism, which again is how people simply form relationships. Again, there's nothing bad about it. There's nothing inherently good about it. You know, it just is. This is how things work. And again, this is something which is inherent to humans. You cannot remove yourself from this. You cannot remove this from you. You are subject to it. And this is what I find really quite funny, that there are people who kind of just want to, you know, they don't want to talk about this. You know, they'd rather sidestep it and just say, no, that's not what's happening at all. There's no way that could possibly be the thing, because we're all a bunch of individuals. We just so happen to work together and things like that. There's no possible way that it could result in me giving favorable treatment to one person and unfavorable treatment to another. But that's exactly what it ends up doing. So that's quite interesting.
To take the perspective of sort of their perspective, I think that it feels harsh. You know, it feels like almost like a criticism when you say, well, you know, this is reciprocal altruism. This isn't, you guys aren't doing this because you love each other. You're doing it because there's an element of gain in all of that. And that's something that, you know, we get.
Well, it can actually be from a sort of, I don't want to use the term love there, but it can actually be from, you know, just because I like you and things like that, because that's basically a form of social currency. So you can use just emotional reasoning like that. You absolutely can, because the emotional side of things like that is social currency. So it is still a gain. So I don't want people sort of doing inevitably the meme, which I know, more resources. Things don't have to be like physical in order to be a resource. You know,
Yeah.
Social currency is a thing.
Yeah, but you look at this stuff, when you look at this stuff from a pragmatic, sort of like a biological, mechanical perspective, a lot of this is happening. That doesn't mean that you don't have real friendships in conjunction with this. Like, and we sort of have this sometimes. I remember a while back, someone said, "Oh, Honey Badger Radio, you have to pay to be their friend or some shit." And I was like, well, first of all, one thing I noticed is that I always enjoyed talking to the people who were invested enough in Honey Badger Radio to actually give some of their resources, their no strings attached resources. I always found them to be much more positive, much more supportive, and often interesting. Like if I had a choice, I would actually spend more time with them. And the thing is that even with these reciprocal altruism relationships, and this is something that was encapsulated in a quote that has served me very well in creating a business. You don't have time in your life to do business with people you do not like. And fundamentally, that's true. But yes, there may be an aspect of resource exchange, reciprocal altruism in it, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that there isn't genuine feeling as well. Because in my personal case, I will not do business with people I don't like, or people I may not dislike, but just find very, very disruptive, who are too emotionally draining to have a relationship, like a close relationship with. I actually will not take money from people who I don't want to have at least a cursory, a reasonable, even if it's at an arm's distance relationship with. And so there's these two aspects to it. Yeah, you may be going to VidCon in order to have a reciprocal, strike up a reciprocal altruism relationship. It doesn't mean that the genuine feelings aren't there, because at least in my case, I don't want to take resources from somebody I don't like or has treated me poorly. And I don't want them to give me resources either if they think I'm an asshole. Or more of an asshole than they can tolerate. So it's like this isn't an either or situation, but it is critical to look at this and make sure that you navigate the potential shoals of negativity, as it were, or pitfalls of in-group and out-group. And to because you don't want to end up perpetuating the same things that we're quote unquote fighting against, to use the in-group and out-group. Again, it's impossible to escape it. The only way to escape it is constant vigilance and doubting yourself, and making sure to be open to criticism and be open to other people's points of view. That's essentially what I wanted to say about that reciprocal altruism. It doesn't have to be just completely mechanical, completely cold. There is an element of affection to it, and liking someone.
Completely correct.
And it's not one or the other. And I actually, even to be honest, although I went to VidCon, I actually mostly went to VidCon to go. Originally I was like, I'm going to VidCon. I did it because Mike asked me to, and to arrange all of this. And originally I was like, oh, what the fuck am I going to do here? Because I'm not really a very social person. I knew that Brian would have a lot of fun hanging out with people and talking to people and making connections. I'm shit at that. But when I heard that there was an industry track, I was like, okay, that's a good thing to go for. So I went into the industry track, which is something that I understand. It's systems, it's algorithms, it's mathematics, it's improving your craft. So that's really why I ended up going to VidCon, was simply to improve my craft. Hanging out with the shitlords, I enjoyed hanging out with them. I particularly enjoyed hanging out with the people who sought us out and spent time just hanging with us. And it took the time, and I'm very thankful to them for taking that time. Sargon took time to hang out with us, Vernaculus and Mundane Matt, and then there was a few YouTubers that were bigger and not really related to these issues. Your video Stux and Needle Drop. It was great. And I'm not really expecting any reciprocity from your Needle Dropped or really any of them. I mean, if they want to do something, that's great. If they don't, it's not a big deal. I appreciate the fact that they sought us out and they spent time with us. So it's not, it's pointing out the pitfalls of in-group, out-group, pointing out what happens with reciprocal altruism and how that sort of enforces in-group, out-group behavior. All of that doesn't mean that people can't be friends and just enjoy each other's company, as I did. And I went there because I wanted to see, I wanted to see Brian network, and I wanted to, I wanted to fulfill Mike's request of me. And I also wanted to learn something. And I don't really have a problem with saying that. I didn't go there entirely just to make friends. I went there for business. And that's good. That's fine. I'm happy with that. You know, like the
There's
world.
nothing wrong with that. It's the very point of going. That's what the actual entire thing is about. But one of the things which I do want to talk about here is when it comes to, you know, in this case, the YouTubes and the making friends and ingratiating yourself. We've covered why people do that and why it's inescapable and part of how humans work. But we're in sort of this interesting time where just knowing people is somewhat a tangible resource unto itself. You know, there is a reason why if you go on business courses or anything like that, they will hammer home network, network, network. Talk to people. You will get more opportunities that way. Because in this sort of instance, being social is, yeah, it's a thing that you can do for fun, but you can also get other things out of it. And there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely not. You know, I fail to see why people would, well, actually, I know why people would turn this into the straw man of, oh, you just say that people shouldn't have friends. It's because they don't want to, you know, fess up and basically admit that, yeah, this is a thing that can happen. Doesn't mean that that's what is happening or what must happen. But the very denial of the mere process and the fact that it exists, that I find, well, very, very interesting. It's just, I think it's just because it hits a bit of a nerve with people. So if you applied this to, say, content creation on YouTube, it doesn't even have to be that. Like you could be a company making anything, making any sort of product. And you sort of go and you get these little extra perks of knowing all of these people, and it will sort of absolutely benefit you financially. But the main thing is that it will also benefit you in other ways socially. So if you socially ingratiate yourself, you know, you've gone through the social identity theory, you've gone through all three of the things, you've categorized the people there, you've identified and said, I want to be part of that group, or I am incidentally part of that group. And then you're sort of trying to get yourself in there and you succeed. And someone says, oh, okay, well, I'll put you onto my product. You know, you can do something for me. You know, you can appear on my Wheaties box or whatever the fuck it is. Doesn't really matter. You then gain a massive amount from that. Now, if you apply it to a platform like YouTube, it transforms directly into monetary gain. So in that instance, you're converting a social link, even if it is purely social, you're converting it into monetary gain. And here, this is what I mean about social currency. You don't even necessarily have to appear on a live stream on someone else's channel. You don't even have to have a video hosted as a guest video. Just being name dropped by someone, that can do it. You can gain a lot from that. Like just being name dropped on, like if Honey Badger Radio, say, was tomorrow name dropped on like a 10 million sub channel, I can't imagine that it would ever happen. But if it was, I guarantee you the week after that, you would see a massive uptake in subscribers just because your name's hit out there. Now, if that happened as a result of you simply being friends with a 10 million subscriber person, are there even anyone? Is there even anyone that high? PewDiePie, maybe. So let's say you go and you meet PewDiePie and you become PewDiePie's newest and bestest friends. And at the end of his video, he does his whole, hey, I just spent some time with the honey badgers and they were great. You'd then get that massive uptick from there. I don't know why. He'd probably talk about giving you the bro fist and everyone would be like, giggity, and so on and so forth. So you would see that uptick from there. So just from socializing, you don't even have to go there and be like, oh, we're going to talk business. Let's strategize and shift them paradigms and all of that sort of shit. You don't even have to do that. Just knowing someone and getting a name drop will be beneficial to you. And this is what I mean by socializing now is the currency. It's absolutely part of the currency. So even when people say, oh, I'm just going there to meet friends and to meet some people, what you're doing is reinforcing, you're going to create some new bonds, but you're also going to be reinforcing some old bonds, which is going to open up that sort of thing, which will then benefit you from a business sense. So even just saying, oh, it's purely social, no, you're being incredibly naive about how things work, if that's what you actually think, because it's not.
And maybe it's my age talking, but I don't give a shit anymore. The thing is that there's practicalities to life, and they exist whether or not you want to maintain this fiction of complete altruism or uh, complete everything you do is just out of love for your fellow man or love for the people around you. Um, I don't know. That narrative just doesn't really appeal to me anymore. I guess I've wrestled with it and resolved it in my own heart. I am a money grubbing whore, and I'm not neither proud nor ashamed of it. It just is.
Well, everyone on YouTube is. Like, it's undeniable. Like, even people like me, it's like, for me, it's a side venture. You know, it's a hobby. I could pick it up or leave it. Makes no fucking difference to me whatsoever, frankly. But, you know, even there's monetary interest in it for me. Of course there is. You know, I'm not going to lie. Earning, you know, a few extra units of currency, I won't specify how much because YouTube gets fiddly about that sort of thing for some reason. Don't know why, but their TOCs are like, no, don't be talking about it because reasons. It's like, yeah, like you're going to find out, but just for the sake of propriety. You know, I'm not going to lie, that is a very nice little extra boost in life. So of course there's a business venture. It's just that, you know, for me, the ratio of, say, business to pleasure is more like, you know, it's like about 10% business, 90%, hey, I'm doing this because I feel like it. When you get people for whom it's the entirety of their income, it's kind of like, do you really want to go out there and try and deny that there's any business aspect to this at all? Because you're a fucking liar, if that's the case. And then this is going to segue us very nicely onto taboos and third rail topics and things that people don't want to talk about. It's pretty amusing to me because obviously not all that long ago, I made a video which ruffled a few feathers and caused all of the ridiculous straw men of, oh, you just think people shouldn't have friends and you hate women and you're salty and can't get laid. And okay, fine, don't bother addressing what I'm saying at all. And this was the concept that when something becomes your business and your business is, well, for the most part, I find the non-feminist community on YouTube to just be a bunch of opinion mongers. That's neither here nor there. But when your business is forming these networks and forming these friendships in order to get monetary gain out of it, and you are, in a lot of cases, basically making your money off of your opinion, just handing out your opinion, you know, you might occasionally delve into some facts and figures, and that's all well and good. You know, I'm not trying to, despite what I know people are going to say, no, I'm not doing the, oh, my content is the best thing ever and everyone should do things like me and fuck everyone else should close their channels. You know, I don't give a shit what people are doing. This is just a noticing of a trend and a noticing of a pattern. That's all it is. There's no emotional involvement. I couldn't give a fuck. But when you're doing that and you're getting that financial gain out of it, I mean, my God, I saw people, what was it, like 2 years ago? People were sort of saying, well, even at VidCon, Anita Sarkeesian earning hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Do you actually believe the things that you're saying? Or do you just ride this in order to get the money? Because, well, that victim narrative, I'm being attacked and harassed. Oh, look at all of the money that she made in that quarter based on that thing. So it's kind of like, well, are you saying this because you believe it, or are you saying it because it's, you know, you've got money coming in? And I find it very, very, you know, it's ironic, I suppose I would call it, that when people, you can go and click on their Patreons and they're getting, you know, hundreds of dollars a video or hundreds, thousands of dollars per video or per month or something like that. It's like, so when I point out or question that you might not necessarily believe everything you say, or that you might be tempted to follow certain things that you're not actually interested in, just as a way of making money because this is your business venture, this is how you make all of your money, that doesn't apply to you somehow.
It
really?
absolutely does.
But it does. You know, it does. You cannot deny that it's a thing. If you've got a Patreon thing, if you're running ads or something like that, you give a shit about this as a business venture. I don't give a fuck if it's even if it's really tiny, even if you're just making like, you know, $10 a video off of it or something like that, like $20, $30 a month. There's still that incentive, and you want to grow because there is that business incentive. Now, I have no problem with that business incentive being a thing at all. I have no problem with people socializing in order to capitalize on that business part, but don't sit there and tell me that the business part is non-existent for you, because you're a fucking liar if you say that. And then this ties back into the reciprocal altruism thing that we were talking about a little bit earlier, and how I think pointing this out to people hits some nerves. Because when people socialize with people, they, you know, maybe they get name dropped, maybe they get a load of subs from the name dropping or something like that. Maybe they get a guest slot on someone's channel. Maybe they just appear on a live stream with them. Maybe they get someone bigger to appear on a live stream with them or something like that. And then they get a hit. They get a bump from doing that. You know, that happens. I guarantee that happens. I mean, even Alison, if I asked you right now, every time I appear on your channel, or probably more towards when I started, did you get a bump in subscribers?
Yeah, I did. We got a significant bump in subscribers and views when you were doing the like the little advertisements.
Yeah.
That was great. At some point, you wanted to pull back on that because you were experiencing sub loss because of it, which I can understand. I mean, I wasn't expecting you to do it forever. At least not with, with no compensation. Yeah, no, we experienced significant increase in subs and everything.
I mean, I could ask Mike if he's here just to try and get him to actually say something for the chat, because chat loves Mike.
Yeah,
I might
here.
even
Hello.
remember. There we go. I even remember like 1 month ago, or was it on a live stream or something, and you talked about getting the Sargon bump.
Yeah, I get bumps from lots of people. It's how I get most of my subs at this point, because of the algorithm thing.
Yeah.
If I don't get bumps, I flatline basically. So I'm very grateful for whoever bumps me.
Yeah, there you go. So you can ask any YouTubers, and I do get the very distinct feeling that happens and deny that this is what they're doing. I'm going to call them all fucking liars, because they are. Especially if they're doing it from a business perspective. If they're not monetizing anything, not making anything off of it, if they don't got to keep up them t-shirts sales, then maybe they're just doing it all for shits and giggles. But, if you've got any financial interest in this and you say this isn't what's happening and you've got no interest in this, you're a fucking liar. And that, I think when you point all of this stuff out, that, you're doing this networking thing, which business schools fucking teach you because it's a thing, when you're playing the reciprocal altruism game, which is a fucking thing. It is inseparable from how humans socialize and their survival strategy. When you are engaging in social identity theory, the practice of it, which you fucking are, because it's inseparable from human beings and how they socialize and how they survive. Sorry, I just really want to hammer that home. When that stuff happens and people then get these bumps and whatnot, then they have to start facing maybe a slightly uncomfortable truth that the success that they're enjoying was not self-earned. And I think that hits a lot of nerves for a lot of people, especially, and this is where, we get the controversy in the people who have now basically just decided, I'm the out group, which is, all the people just going, oh, you're just salty and mad and jealous that you're not friends with these people. I think that I've hit a nerve with this, because I've pointed out that, isn't it funny that most of the people who object to this sort of stuff the most are the people who are channel hopping and daisy chaining all around the fucking place and, trying to jump on everything with everyone else wherever they can. I just think it's like, yeah, it's hit a nerve, because, you've realized that, maybe some degree of your success, whether it's a minority or a majority, I don't know. Frankly, I don't really give a shit. You didn't earn the success that you're enjoying totally yourself. It came as a result of other people helping you along. I think that makes some people feel very self-conscious, because, even though I'm not mentioning it as some sort of attack, it's not, I'm not deriding anyone for doing it. I'm not decrying anyone for doing it. I'm not saying, oh, you shouldn't do this ever, or anything stupid like that. So no, go ahead, do it. You absolutely should. You should be doing this. This is how things should be working, because it's great. It's a really good way of expanding whatever business it is that you've got. It hits people. It hits people hard, because they end up basically seeing it as an attack, because they sort of get self-conscious, like, oh, you're saying I'm not as good as everyone else. You're saying I don't deserve everything that I've got. well, fuck you. You're just being an arrogant elitist on your high horse, and nah. That's kind of where their criticism stops, just with name calling, because they can't make an actual coherent point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I'm not gonna. I can't get that worked up, or I'm not saying that you're that worked up, but I can't get worked up at all over this shit. Network, grow your channel that way. I wish we had more opportunities to do that at HBR, but by the nature of our content, most people don't really want to give us boosts, because it's just very controversial content. And the idea of building everything being self-made, like every YouTube channel being self-made, there's actually more of the rabbit hole you can fall down with that, because having gone through the VidCon industry stream, that's bullshit. It is patently bullshit.
Well, YouTube isn't a meritocracy.
No, it is not.
This is a fallacy which I hear people committing all the time. It's like, oh, the free marketplace of ideas on YouTube, things go to the top, bad things go down. No, they just don't. The very fact that there is an algorithm on YouTube that people try to game constantly should tell you that YouTube is not a meritocracy. The fact that the trending tab on YouTube is, what's the word? Not catered. When, when someone decides what's going on there, there's a word for it. I think it starts with C. Curated. The fact that it's curated should tell you YouTube is not a meritocracy. The fact that you get bumps when people mention you, host you on their thing, cross-reference with you, work with you in some way should tell you YouTube is not a meritocracy. There are meritocratic elements, absolutely. I mean, you can absolutely build up pretty big channels by yourself without getting that many shout outs from people and without working with others. Yeah, you can, but you can do it a lot more and a lot better and a lot quicker if you work with other people, which is then not meritocratic. Yeah. Well, but the other thing is that even if you don't work with other people, which, I mean, I guess it's meritocratic insofar as you're showing off your ability to sort of leverage social relationships into capital. But I'm always going to come from this from a very pragmatic angle, and an angle that I don't find capitalism or any kind of reciprocal altruism to be any sort of negative thing. In fact, I think it's one of our best aspects as human beings, is that the expectation that if somebody do something that they receive a reward for it. That I won't go into it because we can start talking about monetary systems and Marxism and capitalism. I'm a capitalist whore and I'm proud of it. And I think that that is actually moral. This expectation of reciprocation is moral. But to get into this, I want to actually make a brief comment about tone policing. I can understand people getting upset at how someone comes across. And, it happens. But at the same time, a tone policing argument, I've had that throughout my entire career as a men's rights activist or men's issues advocate, or just talking about these issues. And I will keep my tone completely neutral. And they'll be like, well, you're so antagonistic. And it has nothing to, how much of the tone of something is actually genuinely how the person is presenting it, and how much of it is perceived by the person who is listening because they are actually having an emotional reaction to it, what is being said. Now, I'm not gonna say that I understand how people are reacting to your tone, TLDR. I'm just saying, ultimately, tone policing is possibly the least productive activity on the planet. Well, I know that people tend to respond very badly to my tone. I mean, something about my voice inherently just makes me sound like, I'm a condescending dick. It's like, no, I'm not trying to talk down to people or do anything like that. It's just a quirk of how I speak. That's just how it is. Yeah, and I don't know how I can change that. If I ever try to sort of do like an elaborate thank you to someone, like they do something really nice, and I'm like, I really want to be like, oh, thank you for that. That was really good. Like, even there, it probably sounds sarcastic. It's like, no, I'm not trying to be sarcastic. I'm genuinely trying to do something but just something about my voice is just always sounds like a sarcastic, arrogant dick. Yeah.
Sarcasm is everyone's best friend when it's on their side, and everyone's worst enemy when it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, when
Everything-
when you break certain sort of unquestioned assumptions, that's when people suddenly start saying, "Well, you're just not articulating yourself properly, Mike." Really, me.
Well, in my case, I always get like I get a lot of you're just fucking intimidating. Why can't you? It's like I don't know what it is about me that you find intimidating, so I can't really stop it. Um, and uh, and then I'm always pissed off. That's a lot of shit that I get. It's why Brian is like the heart of Honey Badger Radio, and I might be the anus. Um, but let's anyway. So tone policing, I find that to be not a very useful approach. Some people come across as dicks. Apparently, TLDR has resting dick tone.
Resting dick voice.
Resting dick voice.
So you can have resting bitch face, or you can have resting dick voice.
You've taken resting dick voice and taken it several floors down at this point.
Well, I do sometimes like to go down, ladies.
If any does are listening. The other thing is that I wanted to just touch briefly on the rabbit hole that is the YouTube algorithm, and how actually what's happening is not a meritocracy at all. The YouTube algorithm preferentially chooses unoriginal, trending, and derivative content. The end. Like I mean, you can have a little bit of a style, a little bit of talent, and bring that to it, and that might boost your views. But for the most part, all you have to do is have a compelling or charismatic personality, do everything that is derivative or unoriginal and trending, and you can get a large YouTube following just from that. And
that's the same with anything. Anything that is derivative is better than something innovative. Innovation is the absolute enemy of the marketplace. Like if you're an author and you go and you say, "Hey, I've done a bit of research, a really groundbreaking book. No one's ever done it before." You're not going to get published.
Yeah, that's true.
You're just not, because you'll go to a publisher and you'll say, "It's all new. Everything's new. This is revolutionary." Okay, great, but where do we sell it?
Exactly.
Where do we put it in the bookshop? And if you can't tell them exactly where it's going to go, like you've got 30 seconds to tell them, this is the thing, this is what it does, this is the conclusion, and it goes here on the shelf, right between this thing, and the price is this. If you can't do that, they're just going to say, "Yeah, we don't care." Same with you. Anything that's derivative is great because they know it's going to get views. The innovation is bad.
Yep. And with that, I think we should probably transition to the after show. Again, if you want to join us in the after show, www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. Sorry, TLDR, I have to do the marketing thing.
That's fine. Honestly, I feel like I've had more than enough of this stream anyway. It's kind of interesting. The time that for some reason we have the most bizarre audio fuck up ever is the Honey Badger stream where I speak the most.
Yeah. I you know what? I'm okay with that. It's a bit bizarre, but I think it was also happening to Brian. Okay, Mike, take us out. Again, www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. If you want to join us for the after stream, we're going to be talking about fighting the Kekistani army. Fight those memes. Meme war. Death to the memes. Death to Pepe. Come on, you can turn it off anytime now, Mike.
I really hope nobody takes the Kekistan meme too seriously, and then we have to have this whole conversation again. All right, good night.